Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the live session for today. Um, we're going to be talking about storage businesses in Nigeria. I'm so excited to talk about this aspect of the value chain in agriculture because it's one sector people have been, making a lot of profits from. And apart from the aspect of profit, the storage business is uh, a particular part of agriculture that uh, guarantees sustainability of food supply. So what that means is, apart from the money people are making from storage business, the fact that it's impossible to sustain food supply uh, is only it can only be remedied by um, the presence of storage businesses. So without storage businesses, it's impossible to have food supply throughout the year. Okay, so let's go straight into what I have this evening. So first of all, we already know the problem of post-harvest losses. I think I've made mention of one of the major issues we have in agriculture, which is post-harvest losses. People harvesting and being unable to sell, market produces getting spoiled on transit to, location of sale, and for whatever reason, um, most of what we produce in the country usually get uh, spoiled. More than 40% of what is produced in Nigeria is lost to post-harvest losses. So with this very problem, we have to think of viable solutions. We have to think of ways to curb this uh, thief of profits, because post-harvest loss is a thief, right? It comes to clear what you're supposed to get at the end of the day. So that's one problem that exists, and one of the solutions to this very problem is storage. So if all what we produce cannot be consumed at that time or cannot be sold off at that time, then we can store it for a time when people will need it. So that's where storage comes in, because storage is first of all a practice before a business. Storage, first of all, solves the problem of waste before it rewards you with profit. So that's how we're looking at the problem of post-harvest losses, and then that um, how that storage comes into uh, the picture to help us solve this problem. So that's first uh, the first thing that brings up the idea of storage. And then we also have the problem of shelf life. So uh, shelf life of many produce that we consume is usually short. So for instance, your tomatoes, uh, even sometimes even your uh, pepper, the shelf life is usually very short. And so for that reason, uh, if you produce them at that point, the probability of people consuming all the produce at that time is very low. So, and then the produce is not waiting for you to consume it. It has its own lifespan. So tomatoes, for instance, has the number of uh, days or weeks that it will stay before it begins to spoil. So this is a problem, because it means that if people don't consume it within that period of its shelf life, it goes to complete waste. This is where storage also comes in play. So storage comes into play to help us reduce the waste that comes from uh, the waste that comes from uh, the low shelf life of some certain produce. So instead of consuming all the tomatoes you produce at a particular time, you can decide to store it, right? Sell at different time, more like um, uh, preserve the shelf life, you know. And then what it really means is that when you prolong the shelf life in the form of storage, you tend to help people consume this thing at a later time, right? So this is another problem. Shelf life of goods, some of them are short, and so this is where storage comes in. This is where storage business comes in. All right. So another problem here where storage comes into play is the availability of food during dry season. So you agree with me that during dry season, um, there's some food you will not even see. There's some produce that you will not see during dry season. So what if we consume all the food we produce during rainy season? You see that during the dry season, we will not have what to eat. So this is another place where storage comes in. So storage helps us to keep some of these produce that we harvest during the rainy season and keep it for the dry season. So I'm trying to help us understand the fact that um, storage before a business solves problems. And I've listed nothing less than three problems. I've listed shelf life, I've listed availability of food during dry season, I've listed post-harvest losses. So if we have these problems and storage helps us to solve the problem, then there's no way it's not going to reward us. So this is where storage comes in. So I don't want you to just come with the mindset of just making money. Yes, you make money, but then there is a problem that um, it's a problem that storage helps us to solve. All right. So I would like to share with us the opportunities that the storage business brings to whoever is interested. You know, the truth is that in every aspect of agriculture, there's an opportunity waiting for you. In every aspect of that's the value chain. I talked about value chain in one of our live sections. I told us about the different parts of agriculture you can make money from even without owning a farm. Some people are making millions of naira without owning any farm at all, right? So storage is one of those value chains where opportunity is. I know some women, because the truth is that many of the people that are into the storage business are women. I don't know why. I don't know why, but then it's just what it is. I know a lot of women that are making money from storage business. In fact, the truth is that you might even know some of them, right? There are some women around you that stop palm oil. You know that is the business they do. Year in, year out, they have palm oil. Such people, if you are close to such people, you know that they are not broke. They can never be broke, right? Because storage business is a booming business, right? So I'm going to share some of these opportunities with us for some of us that we want to. Some people should ask me, how do I come into agriculture? I don't have. See, there are many ways. You don't have to own a farm. There are many ways you can come in. And this evening, I hope to share some of these opportunities with us. So I want us to understand that farmers work so hard, but the truth is the people that make the most of the money are middlemen, and storage business is part of the middlemen, right? Especially during the period of drought, right? So invariably, okay, let me give you an example. I think last week um, I bought some pieces of yam, bought about 10 pieces of yam, and then you need to see how big these yam are, the way they were so big. I mean, the last time I priced that amount of yam, that kind of yam, it was selling for 5,000 naira, but I bought it for 35, right? So now the farmer that sold that yam wouldn't have sold it 35, probably would have sold it 3,000 or 25. But these yams were very big. But this is the period of yam. Yam is available everywhere, right? So it's cheap. Now, I was just telling my wife, I was like, this is why I'm talking about storage business. This yam, I bought 10 of it. It's in my house, right? Because I have what I'm planning to use it for. So I'm like, what if I buy 1,000 pieces of this yam and keep? Now it will cost me about uh uh okay 3.5 million or something, or maybe if I buy 100, it will cost me about 350,000, right? There is no way I will sell that in less than 600,000 by February, March. There's no way I would sell any of that pieces of yam. And then I'm not incurring any cost. I just have to find a place that is conducive in my house and keep that yam. It will be fine. There, I'm not incurring any costs. By the time yam is cast, I bring it out and I'm making almost times two of what I bought. So if there's money in storage business, right? There's money in storage business. So if you were to go about, if you were to go into this business, how do you start? Because that's the purpose of what we're talking about. If you were to go into storage business, how do you start? How do you go about it? I'll list a little, I'll give you a little list, excuse me. I'll give you a little list of how you can actually get into this business. So first of all, you need to know that I've mentioned that during dry season, there's high demand for this, for a lot of produce, for beans, for maize, for yam, for palm oil, for granite, a lot of it, egusi or bono, a lot of them, there's high demand for it during the dry season, and this is when to come in, right? So one of the ways you can come in is to buy it when it's cheap, like the example I gave with the yam. So you can actually um, target a particular produce, probably that sells well in your area. Because when you want to go into storage business, you have to calculate your risk so that you don't store your money and you are unable to get it back. So you have to study a produce that does very well, that sells very well in your area. There's some people that crayfish sells very well in the area. There's some people that yam sells very well in the area. There's some people that beans. Just find the idea to doing this research is so that you don't find it difficult to resell, right? Because it's not wisdom to keep what you cannot sell. And most times you need to start with what is easy to sell. So you research on the produce that you want to store that is easy to sell in your area. So once you've discovered it, now you wait for when it is cheap. You wait for when it is cheap. You have your capital already on ground, right? You can save your capital. For instance, there are some produce that are no longer cheap, right? So from now till when um, it becomes cheap, you can be saving money, right? Yes, agriculture. On my page, there was a post last week about um, agriculture being a business of smart thinking. Agriculture is not just about capital, it's not just about whether I have the money or not, it's about smart thinking. So you might not have capital right now, right? But between now and the next period when it's cheap, you can be saving 5,000 naira, you can be saving 2,000 naira. And then if by that time you're able to save 150,000, you're able to save 200,000, you can use it to start, right? So, but the idea is you target it when it is cheap. So you buy, see, let me tell you, there are some people that have hit very huge amount of money because they timed it right, because they were able to predict. I'll still talk about prediction of some of these goods as well. I'll still talk about them, but they were able to study and know which of the goods they would store, and then it was a lot of returns for them, right? So the first way you can get into it is to buy it when it's cheap. So you keep your capital when it's cheap. You hit the market. You get your you buy the produce and store, right? So secondly, the way you can go into storage business is to um, go to remote communities. For some of us that have the resources and you really are serious about storage business, one of the best ways to go about it is to go to remote areas where they sell those commodities cheap. Now, this is the difference with the first point. The first point I said was to get it when it is cheap, right? So imagine you stay in Port Harcourt, and yam is cheap in Port Harcourt at a particular period of time. That same period of time, if you go to communities where yam is produced, you'll get it cheaper than you got it in Port Harcourt. So if you got it in Port Harcourt for 35, when you go to remote areas where they produce yam in large quantities, but that's where mostly you get all those commodities cheap. When you go to those places, you could get it for 2.5, you could get it for 2,000, right? Because that price you're buying for 35, transport is inside, the seller's profit is inside. In fact, sometimes marketer's profit is inside. So by the time you get to the farmer's price, it could be 2,000 naira, right? So 1,500 naira difference. So by the time you're transporting to your base, probably you spend 1,000 from it, or 500 from each commodity, right? So this is another way to go about it. So if you have the resources, you go down to where it is produced. You go to exactly where it is produced and buy it off, buy from the farmers and come and store. That one is cheaper than the first option. The first option, you make money, right? But you make more money when you go to, there are some places that they produce oil, palm oil. There are some places where I'm trying to think of some examples. I know there's some places in Enugu, there's some places in Abia State, there's some places in Neboni where they produce oil, and oil is very cheap there. The quality also is always very good there. So you get the quality sharp. The quality is sharp there. So because some of these goods, some people adulterate it on transit. So by the time they're getting to the final consumers, people have adulterated it, and then because they're trying to make more money, probably increase the quantity or something, right? Or something like palm oil. Some people used to put water. So we put some things to make the oil swell, right? So, but when you are getting it from the people that produce it, you get it at the best quality and you get it at the best price. So when you are selling, you are making money. You are sure of making returns. I'm sharing this secret with us so that you don't just do these things blindly or just out of motivation go and fall into debt, right? Or fall into problems, right? So you have to target these things I'm talking about. So it's either get it cheap or you go to the communities where they sell. So when you have gotten these goods, then you store it. You also need to know when the market gets expensive. That's market analysis. You have to know when to sell, because there are some people that buy when it's cheap, but they always fail to know when to sell. Some people sell before the market booms, and some people sell after the market booms, because it's like a trajectory. You buy when it's cheap, and then at a particular point in the trajectory, the market booms, and then after it booms, it begins to go down again. So when you have stored, right, you have to also target when you resell. You don't randomly resell. You have to target the time to sell. And sometimes I don't blame some people, because some people resell out of panic, because there are sometimes that the price of things will refuse to go up. It's just be dangling around some particular figures and just be dangling, and then you'll be afraid, okay, so this thing is not going up, let me just sell and get my money back. A lot of people do this and they end up missing out. So this business is actually a business of patience, and then of courage too, right? Because sometimes you just have to hold your heart and wait for when to resell. So you store and then you wait for the best time to sell, right? So I would also like to talk about the downside of this business. I'd like to talk about the downside of it. There are some times when we experience some problems in this business, and one of it is importation. There are some times when the government, like what's happening with Gary and some other produce, there are some times when the government, out of the hardship and all of that, gets to import goods in large quantity outside of Nigeria, to reduce the rising cost of things. So within this period of time, you find it very difficult to sell at profit. So there is risk involved in this business. I don't just want to motivate you and then you just go with the information that this guy said that will make a lot of money. You have to calculate your risk, right? You have to calculate your risk. You have to have market intel. You always have to have your ears down in the market to know what is going on per time. Because when you do this, it helps you to know when to sell. That's because when you notice some of these trends is about to happen, you can actually pull out, right, and get back your capital. And but there are sometimes, the truth be told, there are sometimes that you might not be able to get back your capital because the market gets too flooded. So before you're able to even get your money back, the price has crashed, right? So there are times like that. It doesn't happen every time, but when things get too hard, the border is opened and then food is flooded in the market. So this is one of the downside. So um, this is one of the downside to storage business, right? So and also there's sometimes when you have a lot of businesses going into that's a lot of storage businesses running at the same time. So that sometimes you have some probably uh, more persons get interested in the business, and so when it's dry season or when it's a period of scarcity, um, when people start bringing out their stored goods and it's too much, the price will not fall as it should. The price will not increase as it should, but it's going to increase, probably not as high as it should, right? Because, for instance, there was importation problem this year, so a lot of these goods were imported, and um, a lot of people that stored lost money. So a lot of them are discouraged, and some of them are displaced by the reason of their capital being burnt. So by next year, storage business is going to be a big business because you will have too many persons uh, in the market, that are stored because of the fear of this same thing happening again. So something like next year, you are sure of making money, but there are some times when um, I mean, when it's good, when it's booming very well, and market is a lot of people get into it. Okay, Adam made 1 million last year with storage. This person comes in. Egmenka made 3 million in storage. A lot of people get into it and they want to make their own money. By that period of time, the returns you make might not be that much. So that's one downside to storage business. And that downside to storage business is capital because storage business is capital intensive, right? Capital intensive. You have to have money to be able to store before you can sell, get back your profit, your capital, and then start talking about profit. So, but I've also made mention of how that can be how that can be overcome, and I said that between the period of time when it is scarce, between the period of time when it is scarce and when it gets cheap, you can begin to save gradually. You can be saving monthly, you can be saving weekly, and by the time it is time to buy when it's cheap, you have your capital on ground. So these are the downsides that we have in the storage business, right? And there are so many things you can store. The amount of things you can store and make money out of is enormous. You can store beans, you can store rice, you can store, for instance, rice. You can go to Ebonyi State. There are some places in Ebonyi State where rice is very cheap, especially when people are harvesting. So when you go to localities like that, you can buy cheap, store rice, you can store tomatoes. But then that brings me to another point, another part of this live session, which is the two different kind of storage that we have. So we have the storage where you have to process first before you store, and then you have storage where you don't need to process them. Now, for the one where you have to process things like tomatoes, things like pepper, things like a couple of them, you have to take them through the process of uh, transformation. You have to process them to be able to be stored during the period of abundance so they can sell during the crisis. But then there are other ones you don't have to process because the one that involves processing would require you to also invest beyond buying. So beyond buying tomatoes, you still have to spend a lot of money on an amount of money on labor to dry it, to grind, to process, to turn into powder, whatever method of processing you want to do, you still require funds to do that, right? So, but when you are not processing, it's quite cheaper. You just get the input of the commodity you want to store, and then you store. So, but even at that, there are certain uh, uh, how do I put it, procedures you have to observe. So when you are storing, you don't just go and carry the commodity and keep. It might get spoiled there, right? So there are some precautions you have to take note of when you are storing, right? And then for each commodity, there are precautions you have to take. Like beans, there are some things you have to do. You have to put it in an airtight container. There are different ways people store this in. There are different ways people take precaution. You can I think I know of people putting it in airtight containers and then putting this chili pepper inside so that insects will not come and eat it up, right? So also for rice, there's a way to store rice. There are certain places you cannot keep rice, otherwise it will absorb water and spoil. Tomatoes too, there are some places you cannot keep tomatoes, otherwise it will get spoiled as well. So when you are going into storage, you have to know your commodity, how it is stored. You don't just buy it and go and keep. I said buy and store. It's not just as literal as it stands. There are ways you get about the storage. So you have to get information from your colleagues that are into that, into storage of that particular commodity. You learn how it is done, and then you store it properly, right? Because if you don't, there are storage pests, storage diseases that affects commodities, food produce. So you don't want that to also, that's another risk that is involved in storage. You don't want your stored goods to have, be infested by these pests or diseases, right? So these are the things you need to know about food storage business. First of all, I started by letting us know that food storage is a solution to a problem. I listed about 3 problems that food storage helps us to solve, right? It's not a business first, it's a solution first before it becomes a business. And then I talked about it saves us from the problem of post-harvest losses, whereby instead of us allowing our produce to waste or get spoiled, we store them, right? Since it cannot be consumed at that time. We talked about shelf life. The shelf life of a lot of things that we eat is short. It gets spoiled within a short period of time. So, storage helps us to prolong the shelf life, keep it for a longer time when people can use it. Because if we pack all the thing and bring for us to eat at once, it's almost impossible, right? So that's the second problem solved. The third problem I said was availability of food during dry season. So when most of the food we eat is produced during rainy season, and then farming stops in dry season because rainfall is not there to feed the plants with water, except for some of us that are into irrigation farming that farms throughout the year. But the general public are more into uh, seasonal farming. That's farming during rainy season. So when people harvest and sell, if food is not stored, then during the period of scarcity, we'll be in serious hunger. So food has to be stored during the rainy season so that it can be sold. You might think it's exploitation. Initially I used to have that mindset that this is exploitation. Why should people store food only to come and sell it expensive during dry season? And I used to think that way too before. But then, apart from it being business, they're actually providing a solution, right? And you're paying for the solution that they're providing, because if they didn't provide food for you to eat during dry season, will starve, right? So, and that's part of the problem some Western countries have. They have to import food to augment with what they have and a lot of that. So these are the problems that food storage um, helps us to overcome. And then I talked about the business part of storage business, talked about how you can get into it, talked about the downside of it, and also talked about the procedures for storage. So I hope that we're able to um, get something out of what the many things I've said today. So I'll just give 1 minute for question. If you have a question, just type it in the comment section, and I will take your question just um, in a minute. And then if there's no question, then we'll call it a day. So I'll just give 1 minute. If you have a question about storage business, probably how you can come in as much as I've talked about it already, or whatever experience you've had before that you need clarity on, um, you can um, you can comment and I would answer your question. All right. So I don't think I'm getting any question yet. So I think I'll call it a day. But later on, probably for people that watch later on that comments that question, I'll surely answer your questions as much as I can. Thank you so much for your time. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be talking about something also interesting. My aim is to ensure that we have as many persons as possible engaged in agriculture and help to get a lot of people into agriculture so that we can reduce food insecurity and also empower people because agriculture is money. So thank you for your time. In 2 weeks time we'll talk about something else that can boost your knowledge and your access to agriculture. Thank you.